All right. Good morning. Everybody hear me okay? So I've been coming to this conference for several years, usually to do a quick market update in the mornings. Last year I bailed on you guys because I was in Australia. Oh, man. How I'd like to be back there again. I think it's dry there, which I hate it for their agriculture industry, but boy, would I love to see some dry weather. All right. Oh, did they recently? On top of... Yeah, exactly. Okay, well, last I heard it was dry down there, so that must have been very recent. Oh, goodness. And that they probably didn't even report on the sheep. Probably don't have a count on that yet. So, okay, well, that is unfortunate. I guess I'm glad I'm not in Australia right now. Okay. All right, so what we typically do here, we start with a review of last year's prices. So I just worked my heart out yesterday getting these things on a graph, and here they are. So these are historical Kentucky goat prices. We'll start with goat prices. These are selection 2 kids from 45 to 60 pounds. Last several years, 2011, 2018, it makes for a really messy slide there. As you can see the 2018 there in pink. One thing that I want you to notice about this slide, more than the actual prices, because we're going to look at the prices on the next slide by themselves, is the pattern, okay? Any of you who have heard me talk, I'm always talking about this seasonal price pattern. If you're a new producer, memorize this seasonal price pattern, because as you can see, it's been the same for a while, and I don't think that's going to change. I think our seasonal pattern of higher prices in the winter, lower prices in the summer and fall, that's going to stay the same. All right. Why do you think that is? Some of you new producers, if you want to throw out a guess there, why do you think we see this pattern with the goat market? There's holidays scattered throughout the year, so possibly, but probably not as much as another reason. Really supply as much as anything. So are goats somewhat seasonal breeders still? Yes, they like to breed in the fall. They like to kid in the winter, maybe spring. And so we just get, which one of these is my pointer button? I don't want to hit something wrong. The red one? Okay. So we get a whole lot of supply to the market right here, which makes those prices drop, okay? All right. One other thing I want to note on here is the difference. We used to see a much bigger drop. So we always have this drop, usually happens May, June, sometime in there, and it used to be $1 a pound or more from the high price of the year to the low price of the year. Last year, moderated out a little bit more. It was about 80 cents, 70, 80 cents, somewhere in there, okay? So that's one thing I think is interesting in our goat market. We'll talk a little bit more about that in a few minutes. All right, to get this cleaned up a little bit, this was last year. You can see we had a high of just over $3 a pound, and like I said, that low was somewhere around $2.20 to $2.30 a pound last year. Okay. Any questions on this price slide? There's some extra handouts going around if anybody didn't get one, came in late. I'll hand these over to Tom, and he can get you fixed up there. Okay. So next we're going to look at light lamb prices. So we have 2 sheep markets in the state of Kentucky. We have more of a light lamb, which is very similar to the goat in terms of market. It's an ethnic market type product. And then we also sell more traditional fat lambs or heavy lambs. So we're going to look at those price graphs independently, okay? So what do you notice about this price graph? Anything you want to point out? Everybody's got to wake up this morning. Come on. They're higher? Not necessarily. There's nothing on this price graph that hit $3 a pound. Yeah. But is the pattern similar? That's what I want you all to see. Is the pattern similar? Yes. So we've got the same seasonal thing going on with these light lambs that we do the goats. Why is that? Is it the same reason? Same reason, yeah. It's still that supply thing, okay? So sheep are still somewhat seasonal breeders. I know that, we breed some of them to lamb in the fall, and that's great. We breed some of our goats to kid in the fall, and that's great. But tremendous amount of them hit the market right here, okay? And that's what we see. And we're starting to see, I think, this gap from high to low not shrink in the light lamb thing, but actually widen just a little bit. So we're getting a little bit further between our high prices and our low prices for the year, okay? So you look at that on a graph by itself, and you can see that for the year we were somewhere around $2.60 a pound on our high for these 60 to 80 pound lambs. Now I did not specify what size they were earlier, and I guess I should have. The reason I quote 60 to 80s is because that's where most of our lambs get marketed. Now, there is a premium sometimes for those fancy 50-pound lambs. So some of those 50-pound lamb prices probably would get closer to those goat prices, okay? All right, so a high somewhere around $2.60 and a low, unfortunately, below $1.50 last year in the summer, okay? All right, what about heavy lamb prices? Boy, isn't that a mess. Yeah, I mean, we see some of the pattern, but it's not nearly as neat. It's not nearly as defined. And there's just a lot more factors that play into our heavy lamb market. That's what I always tell people. When you get into these fat lambs, you're dealing with competition from out west, and quite frankly, they just mess everything up. And if it was just an eastern United States supply and demand, we'd be good. But it doesn't work that way. So we see a lot of variation in the fat lamb market. And in particular, last year, I mean, it just got plain ugly out here. That's all you can say about it. The only thing that I can really point out on this chart is if you are doing traditional fat lambs, more of a wool lamb type thing, and I know there's producers in here that do, it really looks like if you can push those lambs and get them to market in April and May, it's probably your best bet for the year. So winter lamb, get them to market April and May. Okay? All right. Some of them definitely will. BP, if you have January lambs, when will they weigh 100 pounds? Usually.
Well, maybe by April, May.
Yeah. So I said you kind of got to push them to do that, but they will do it if they're pushed somewhat. And I think that's why we see that price premium, is because that's really when those fancy new crop big lambs are hitting the market and the buyers really love them, and then they kind of get their feel of them, and this happens. So, and this is completely contrary to the Western lamb prices. So the way we raise big lambs in the Eastern United States is just completely different than the way, it's like raising them in two different countries, just about. All right, current market prices. So goat kids, 45 to 60 pounds, just like it is this time of year. It's just been rocking, okay? We've seen prices $2.95 as high as $3.15, maybe even a couple $3.20 prices thrown in there. We've had some selection kids definitely at that $3.20. I think I've even sold a set for $3.30. So really strong goat prices to start out this year. Light lambs, kind of the same way. Those 40 to 60 pounders have been pretty hot. 260 and above. I've had some at 280. I've had one set, I think, at 295. Opened up the year hot, and then they kind of leveled off just a little bit. Light lambs, more 60 to 80 pound stuff, has been $2.25. We've seen them $2.40 at times, but you're kind of talking about that price range right now. And then our big lambs, somewhere around $1.60 or so, but they have been very lightly tested. So we haven't had a lot of those hitting the market to really know their true value right now. All right, the goat outlook. I think the goat supply just gets tighter and tighter. Seems like we have less people every day raising goats. Any of you that raise goats know that they're probably not the easiest livestock in the world to raise. Would everybody agree with that that's ever raised them? Yeah, they can be a little challenging, right, Dr. Beth Johnson? Yeah. Yes. So I think we have less and less people raising them. And I can remember years ago, I mean, we would have 200 or 300 kids at a sale. And now I am doing good sometimes. Sometimes the buyers will just text me, will you have 100 kids? And they don't mean 100 good kids. They mean 100 kids of all classes and sizes and just 100 kids. And sometimes I say, yeah, I think so. And sometimes I have to say, no, we're not going to have it. So just gets, like I said, just tighter and tighter. I guess the good news if you are raising goats is prices should increase as these supplies get tighter. Prices should go up. And like I said, that gap between the high prices of the year and the low prices that we see in the summer and the fall, it should continue to come together and get more narrow, okay? There's always going to be that pattern, but hopefully we won't have as big of a summer slump as we've had in previous years. One positive note, I think the quality of the kids that I saw last year was pretty good across the board. You know, I think those producers who have stuck with it and are still raising goats are doing a pretty good job. All right, sheep outlook, talking about light lambs here, so people that are selling lighter lambs going into the ethnic market. Supply seems to continue to increase, okay? We see more and more of these things hitting the market every year, and this is true for spring-born lambs. Anybody in here raised hair sheep and lamb in the spring? Anybody in here raised hair sheep and lamb another time of year? That is encouraging to me. That is good. I'm liking to hear that. Okay, because for the past several years, I have raised hair sheep and I have lambed in the spring, and I'm going to tell you, it's just so easy. It is so easy, and that's why people do it, because they can lamb outside. You know, we lamb outside. We drive up on the side-by-side. We throw a tag in their ear and dip navels, and I didn't touch those lambs again until I weaned them. Okay, it was easy. But as we saw from that price graph, I'm not sure that it's going to be profitable for me anymore to continue to do that. So I lambed in January this year. Okay. So as supply increases, we expect prices to drop, and the gap between high and low prices is going to widen, like we've been seeing. Okay. Too many lambs on the market in late summer and fall. Kathy's been with me at these markets in July and August, and you call the buyers and they're just like, we don't want any, we don't have any room for them, we got nowhere to go with them. And it's just so frustrating when the market gets like that. So options. Some producers this year that spring lambed decided, well, I'm just not going to sell mine, I'm just going to hold them until the market gets better in late fall and winter. Okay, well, if you do that and you do it correctly, which means those lambs continue to grow, then you're going to run the risk of the lambs getting too large for the ethnic market. And unfortunately, what we see is when these lambs go from 70 pounds to 90 pounds, is sometimes as much as a 30, 40, 50 cent price drop per pound. So you've put more weight on them, but you probably didn't make any more money. Okay? The other thing that we see is this done incorrectly, and people decide, okay, I'm going to keep my lambs until the market gets a little better, but they don't put any gain on them. Instead, they just stand there, and they get stale, and they actually sometimes lose weight. And I saw probably the worst set of lambs I've ever had in January in Bowling Green. And it was people that wanted to hold those lambs until the market got better. They wanted to feed them through the winter until that market got better, but they forgot the feed part. Okay? Yeah, you can't forget the feed part. So what we end up is with 70-pound thin hair lambs. So they're 70-pound feeder lambs that nobody wants. Because if you're feeding these for the ethnic market, by the time you get bloom back on them, they're too heavy for the ethnic market. 40 to 80 pounds. Yeah. And that is what the majority of our lambs in the state of Kentucky will sell at these days. Okay. All right, so this is what we're seeing, and it's not working well. Okay. The other option is producers can explore fall or winter lambing. Okay, and like I said, I January lambed with the hopes of weaning my lambs and putting my rams right back in April, and maybe they'll breed for fall. Don't know. We'll see. Okay. All right, sheep outlook heavy lambs. As I said before, I think a good suggestion is to fall or winter lamb. Try to get them to market by May before that price crash happens. Or have an alternative market, okay? Have a marketing plan and a place that you know you're going to go with those lambs that is going to pay you more than market price. And then rely on forages as much as possible to cut costs, okay? So if you're not going to get those lambs to market by May, then you probably can't afford to put all that expensive feed into them. Makes sense? Right. All right. What kind of questions do you all have?
A couple of questions for Tess.
Yes, sir.
How many buyers do you, at your different livestock facilities, do you normally keep for like sheep and goats? Are there a lot, or is it just one or two?
Usually there's 3 to 5, but there may be one buyer there that only really buys coal ewes and coal does, and there may be one buyer there that really just buys feeder lambs, you know. So you got a little bit. There's mainly 3 or 4 that are interested in the big groups of kids and lambs. So
some of those buyers are buying for 2, 3, 4, 5 different.
that is true. Yes.
So you don't always know, and they're not going to.
Yeah, and it's kind of like a soap opera. So they may be best friends this week, and 2 weeks later they hate each other's guts. So you know, if you try to keep up with all that drama, telling you, it's been a lot of fun through the years, but boy, so you never know for sure. Oh, okay, so these prices that I pulled were from all of the graded sales in the state of Kentucky, of which there are 7 every month. Richmond, Kentucky has 2 now, first and third Mondays. Other ones in this area, Paris has one on the 4th Tuesday. Springfield, Kentucky has one on 3rd Saturdays. Bowling Green's probably still the biggest, and that's 2nd and 4th Thursdays. And then we have one in far western Kentucky. They are as consistent across the markets as they can be. Yes, for the most part they are. Now, the thing is, you may have a sale in Richmond at the beginning of the month and then a sale in Paris at the end of the month, and the market could have changed 40 cents in those 3 or 4 weeks, or vice versa. So they are as consistent as they can be for sheep and goat markets. And one thing I like to point out is when we're talking about sheep and goat markets, we're talking about such a small industry in comparison, okay? So we're talking about probably, I think the last numbers I read is there's somewhere around 100,000 sheep and goats killed a week in the U.S. There's well over 1 million head of cattle. So you change the sheep and goat market by 10,000 head in a week, and you've upped it or lowered it 10%. You change the cattle market by 10,000 head in a week, and you've barely changed it at all, okay? So that's why things change fast in the sheep and goat world. There's one in Mayfield. Yeah. Those can all be found on the KDA website, as well as you have them on the Sheep and Goat Development Office website. Mm-hmm.
They may buy a different one. What's the chances of one of them buying all that he wants at a real cheap price, and then even if he's buying for other people, then he sells them to them maybe for a little price or upset price?
Well, I think most of the year that's not a problem or a concern, but I think as we see these numbers continue to increase, July, August, September, October, that's where that could possibly happen. And then the other time, I always want to throw this, the other time you have to be careful about the sheep and goat market is around Easter. Yes, Easter is a great holiday for the market. There's a lot of, especially lamb, consumed. But everybody in the eastern United States wants to sell lambs for Easter. So when you've got that many lambs hitting the market at one time, actually what we see is the market decrease. So if you have any options at all, and there is a graded sale the week before Easter Sunday, do not come to that one. Please, I sit there at those sales and I beg people, please don't let anybody show up today because the market is going to be terrible and there's nothing I can do about it. Yes, give it a week or two to clear out some of that supply and it usually rebounds. Maybe not as high as it was 3 weeks before Easter, but definitely better than it was that week before. You might as well wait. Yes. Well, you will probably lose a few cents per pound, but you will have put additional gain on them, and that will usually work out in your favor. Just that, really, the 2 weeks before and the 2 weeks after gets a little shaky. All right. Thank you all.